What's up, everybody? We are back for another edition of Titletown South Florida. I'm Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor at the Miami Herald. Flying solo this week as far as our hosts usually go, but we've been gone for far too long. We were gone for about a month, so I wanted to get back and talk some high school sports and get everybody kind of up to speed on what's been going on, not only in the football off season as we get closer and closer to spring football, but it's the spring sports season as well. And the baseball season is heating up. As we all know, a lot of talent here in South Florida. We're by the midway point of the season, so we're going to have our good friend Joe Frisaro of Scorebook Live, also from a long time Miami Marlins beat writer, come on the show with us today to talk a little baseball, talk a little bit about the top prospects in Dade and Broward County. Also, our good buddy Larry Blustein will be on once again to talk a little bit about what we mentioned before as we go into spring football in the next month or so. Some of the top transfers have been a lot of offseason movement. A lot of teams loading up, some surprises that maybe you haven't heard right now, and some coaching changes as well that could have an impact on the upcoming 2023 football season. And as usual, we'll salute the top performers from this past week. As always, on a weekly basis, the Miami Herald honors the top kids in Dade and Broward County. We put them up for a vote for you to pick who the top players of the week are in both counties. And we have another strong group this past week from those spring sports that we mentioned before as we get closer and closer to the postseason. Now, remember, in addition to watching this show, as you are right now on either YouTube or on the MiamiHerald.com on the website, we also have this show available as a podcast wherever you pod, at Spotify, iTunes, most other platforms. It's available to you if you're in the car driving and you can't watch the car, keep your eyes on the road. You can always listen to us. You might not be able to see all the clips that sometimes we provide, but you can hear all the interviews that we do with teams. And we'll start off with one of those. Since we mentioned before, it is baseball season. The Stoneman Douglas baseball team is no stranger to being one of the best, not just in South Florida, not just in the state of Florida, but in the country. They've won 2 national championships in a row. They're at it again and maybe have the best team they've ever had. They're 15-0 so far this season. They've won 37 straight games dating back to last season. Haven't lost a game, period, in over a year. And this team this week probably faced its toughest gauntlet of the regular season, but blasted right through it. They were challenged, but they survived the close call with Columbus. They beat a solid North Broward Prep team, who was also a 2-time defending state champion, 4-2, and then went on the road to take on Archbishop McCarthy, another team with a lot of tradition. It's getting back to what they used to be, and they survived a 2-1 game after that. One of the big reasons is University of Florida commit Jaden Dubinowitz, who is one of the top pitchers on the staff for the Eagles, had a great start. Not only had a solid start against Columbus, but then came back and shut down McCarthy and was able to hold them to 1 run. And we talked to Jaden after the game just a little bit about what's been the key to his success and the Eagles' consistency this season.
I was really confident coming in here. They had my number in the fall, but if I just threw my game, I knew I could compete like I did.
Jaden, what are you learning from these games, this tough contest against some of the best of the best?
It's honestly just building me as a player, for when I go off to college and everything. It's just staying locked in for all 7 innings and doing what I can, and my team will pick me up.
When you took the ball off the hip, did you have any confidence or lack of confidence that you weren't going to go 7?
No, I mean, it hurt for a little bit, but I knew I was going to be able to battle through it. It wasn't the first time I had to deal with an injury while I was pitching, so I knew I would be fine.
You guys have won lopsided wins, big scoring wins, and then you have to win a 2-1. How does that help you guys that you were dealing with adversity but still won as a team?
I mean, it's really good. We're coming together as a team. We're not where we are. We have a lot more potential, and I think it's just up from here.
Why has this team been so on course, so focused so far?
Just can't say things. It's all the coaches, man. They put in the work, and then we do our job, they do their job, and it all just comes together.
It's a pretty solid week for you guys. 2 really big wins over the past couple of days. Does this kind of validate that you guys can go for the 3rd chip?
I think so. I mean, that's 2 of the toughest teams from down here, and the way we can just battle through everything, I think we can go a far way again this season.
Yeah, this Douglas squad, I mean, starting just with Jaden right there, as we mentioned before, going to UF, you've got up and down the lineup, power, not only power hitters, but guys who can consistently get on base and produce runs. Christian Rodriguez, a 2-way threat. This kid also committed to Florida, but may end up probably going pro, and I doubt he might not even get to Gainesville. He not only has it at the bat, with power numbers, He struck out 14 against North Broward Prep the other day in that game as well, just showing what kind of an athlete he is. That lineup, Matt Ossenfort going to Vanderbilt, Dylan Mockin going to Appalachian State, Ryan Lujo going to Dayton. I mean, on and on and on. Devin Fitzgerald as an NC State commit, and Nico Benestat going to USF. This team is not only stacked, but they really have it, really unselfish squad that has an uncommon focus that has kept them on course and really has a chance to do something special this year, because in some of the research that we've done, the last team that we remember in baseball is so hard to go undefeated. 36-0-1 is one example, and that was in 1996, Westminster Christian, some of the great teams the Warriors had back then. Probably since then, no Dade or Broward team has been able to run the table, as far as we know, going unbeaten. So it's still early. Douglas still has a lot of games left. We don't want to jinx the Eagles, but with the team they have that can beat you in so many ways, it's very likely they might be able to pull this off. We spoke to Coach Todd Fitzgerald right after the game when they beat McCarthy, and here's what he had to say.
But really, it's about, we want to win the last game. If we drop a game here or there, then that's what it is. But these guys are really cerebral. Nothing ever seems to faze them. They've been in the biggest environments. They played in the biggest environments. So they're just going to go out there and give it everything they got night in and night out. And tonight, I couldn't say enough about Jaden. I mean, I thought he pounded the zone, attack, strike one, made big pitches when he had to make big pitches, gave up two really one barrel all night, a little pop fly out, home run. But they got a very good ball club over there. I think we're both in the same position trying to go to Fort Myers. So I venture to say hopefully they'll get there. Check's a good friend of mine, man. We played same junior college in Arizona, so it's always good when you get to compete against guys you like and guys you have a lot of respect for. So make sure you include that in the story. I got a lot of respect for them and their program, and they did a great job. It's just our night tonight. That's all it was.
It's just to find a way, whether it's an obstruction call or great pitching, win a one-run game. Just you guys find a way.
Yeah, I mean, just like I've been telling you all year. I mean, like the hit and run was huge to tie it up. Then we got the obstruction call there. We might have left a couple more runs out on the board, or we had to grind at the plate tonight. Connor McShane was really good, best I've seen him in a long time. A good velo, slider was good, and he kept us off balance or in check too. And then they go with the soft righty at the end there that just screws you into the ground. But they had a good plan. We had a good plan, and at the end of the day, like I said, it's a one-run game. You hate to have anybody lose it, but I'm glad we won it.
Talk about Doobie. I mean, Doobie, just what he's done, especially facing Columbus here tonight against two really premier schools.
Well, he's a big time arm. He's a 24. He's a strike thrower. He's always been a strike thrower. He's never been a guy to really walk guys. He's battling a little ankle injury at Columbus last week, and it kind of maybe caught up to him in about the 5th or 6th inning. But tonight, he worked really hard this week to get ready to go, and he said that there was no way he was coming out of this game tonight and he was going to finish it. So, sometimes you got to just trust your players and believe in your players, and I couldn't be happier for him in the performance he had tonight. It's just another stepping stone in his development, and he's going to go off and do great things in his career. So.
Along those lines, Christian, 14 Ks the other night, and then he can turn around. I mean, the complete player that he is, the two-way guy that he is. What do you think? Just the talent he is.
Yeah, I mean, who? Christian?
Christian, yeah.
I mean, tonight he didn't have a great night at the plate, but he grinded. He made a couple good plays in right field for us, and that's baseball. Offenses sometimes get shut down, and the pitching and defense wins championships. I went into this week telling our guys that we're playing the semifinal and the state final. Mm-hmm. We had to play North Broward on Tuesday, which is a juggernaut, and we had to come over here and play these guys ranked number 5 in the country. So I told our guys, if we win these 2 games, we got a really good shot at being a state champion. So if we can play this kind of caliber baseball in the playoffs like we did the last 2 nights, I think we'll be tough to beat. But again, we're still going to go back to work tomorrow. We're going to get better. We're going to clean up a few things. We're going to work some backside hitting and work on our 2-strike approach a little bit. But other than that, I just thought it was a clean game, well played on both sides, a lot of class for both programs, I thought.
One of the best regular season games you'll probably find anywhere, as Fitz mentioned. There are 2 top 5 teams in the nation battling it out. You don't normally see that, but that shows you the depth of the South Florida area, having 2 quality teams like that. And the other one, the game of baseball, as we said, one night to the next, your fortunes can change. For McCarthy, they did. They came back the next night. They were at home. They played Westminster Christian, another traditional program that is a solid state title contender again this season. And they came out on top, 4-1, a solid effort there. And this team, the Mavericks, they really deserve a lot of credit in the sense that their program has really come a long way in a short time to get back, to try to start getting back to what it once was. And we'll talk more about that later in the episode. But, Coach Aaron Voracek and those guys, it was a rough go for the Mavericks a few years ago after there was a change in staff there. Then COVID hit. The program that once was a national championship, a consistent national championship contender, forget not just state. They won a ton of state titles, but also that dropped not to bare bones, but far from what it was. And Coach Check and his staff has slowly but surely started to get them back to the point where they are right now with lots of talent. The left side of their infield is amazing between Antonio Jimenez and Justin LeBron, two guys that could end up being big leaguers down the road. Andrew Ildefonso, a very consistent bat in their lineup that is recovering from an injury, also a two-way threat. If he can pitch maybe by the end of the year, even more for the Mavericks to potentially contend for a state title. Here's Coach Aaron Voracek after that win over Westminster talking about his team's ascent to where they are now.
For me, honestly, I like the fact. I always tell my guys, it's the beauty of baseball. And sometimes you have to wait a week in high school. But I said, the beauty of baseball is we're not waiting like football. We're not waiting a week after a loss. I said, we get to come right back out and, redeem ourselves. And so, I think we did some good things. The thing like, my one assistant, Terrell, made mention in our meeting. He said we need to do a better job, and he's correct on this. Of when we score runs early in a game, continuing that pressure and putting guys away. That's the thing. And I preach to him all the time. The longer we let somebody hang around, the more dangerous that team becomes. Because then all of a sudden they get life. They get some life. If we put the leadoff hitter on in that seventh. We were fortunate that the next hitter up swung it, a couple balls that were out of the zone. He should have walked. Should have been first and second right there with the time running. We just got to get better at some of those things. But it's to come out against Westminster Christian, a traditional powerhouse, and they're always well coached. They always play the game the right way, and they're still a great club. To come out and be able to beat them 4-1, I'm happy with that.
Is what you're talking about a little bit adjusting to being the hunted, where you are a team now with people are gunning for you, and you have to do these things that teams expected do?
Yeah, what's funny is even when we weren't good, because I got here in 2018, I always, 2019 was very average. We were 13 and 14, and we weren't great. I still felt like because of, the tradition here, I always felt like we were kind of the hunted. Like people, they always want to beat you. Didn't matter how bad you were. It's still, they want to beat you. And it always seemed like we got almost all the time, got everybody's number one arm or, whatever. But definitely now, we're having a solid year. I feel like, yes, the bullseye is on your back. You got to come ready to play every day. But for me, I like that feeling. I think most of my guys probably thrive off that, I would think. So, but you're right. Every day we come out, we better come on with our A game, or else we're going to get beat.
So do you feel like since you went to state that year, like it's kind of intensified again? Like it's like they're seeing McCarthy like that again, kind of? Or do you feel like...
I don't, it's fun because 2021, we just had a bunch of hard-nosed guys that were grinders. We had quite a few of them. I had 4 in that, should have been 5, but I had, out of my seniors, I had 4 out of 6 play Division I baseball, and should have been a 5th, and that should have gone on. The other one went D2. So, it's not like we were, when I say overachieved, I just feel like that club was hard-nosed, ready, determined. where this club, I think, has a chance to be. I think this club has a chance. If we put it all together, it has a chance to be special. I mean, we're still missing our number one arm. He finally played defense tonight. Andrew Alfonso still can't throw up very hard.
He can hit, though.
He can hit. Yeah. He can hit. And that's why I said, that was missing that bat for that week. We won those games, but that was a big bat that we lost. But having him back in the lineup, no doubt, and him being able to play defense is definitely a plus. So.
On that note, we're going to talk our conversation now with our buddy Joe Frisaro just about Douglas, about McCarthy, and several more players and teams that have caught his eye during this past month and a half of the first part of the season. Take a look. All right, and now we're here to talk some baseball with my good buddy, longtime compatriot on several baseball beats, Joe Frisaro of SB Sports Florida, Sportbook Live Florida, sorry. And but before that, many years covering the Miami Marlins for 20 years for MLB.com, and now even still covers them today. But Joe, how you doing, man? I know we've seen a lot of high school baseball together. I wanted to bring you on the show to talk a little bit about that. How's everything going?
Going great, Trey. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked a little bit already on this episode about this great Stoneman Douglas team. I mean, we've seen some good ones over the years that they've had 2 national championships the last 2 years, but you and I both agree from seeing them, this is a complete roster. They could beat you every which way with power, small ball, they defend, they pitch. I mean, it's probably a loaded question to say what's impressed you the most about them, but I guess if you could talk a little bit about that, like just the role the Eagles have been on.
I guess I can answer that. What's impressed me the most about him and Fitz, Coach Todd Fitzgerald, and I asked him this really early on about I use the word complacency, because like you noted, you win 2 straight state and national titles. You come in, you got still a balanced team. You got some very good seniors, but you have underclassmen that are going to keep that pipeline at Douglas going. But that word does not exist for them, complacency. That's probably what's impressed me the most is they come to play every night. And in baseball, it's very, very difficult. You can run into a hot pitcher, and they face them. So they face everyone's best. They face Frankie Menendez early on at the Doral. They're getting good pitching. They face Connor McShane, who was on his A game the other day for Archbishop McCarthy, and still Douglas wins the game. And I guess what's, like I said, the fact that they show up every night and they embrace being undefeated, they embrace, the expectation, and that's probably what impresses me the most about this team.
Yeah, and Fitz has said it. I mean, this is a guy that goes back to American Heritage days. He coached Eric Hosmer and a bunch of other great players, but he says this team is like you said, it's almost like they're on autopilot. Like he doesn't have to say much. They almost run practice themselves. They keep each other accountable. And like I said, in a day-to-day sport like baseball, where you have to stay even keel, it's really impressive to see a team that's that good be that unselfish and that kind of,
that focus. Yeah, that focus.
Yeah.
And as it's hard because they're getting, obviously Christian Rodriguez, their ace, might be the best pitcher in the state. He's a potential top 3 round pick. Probably will go to UF. That a lot depends on the draft, of course. But C-Rod has stepped up at the plate, on the mound's been special. But Jaden Doobie, I just call him.
Yeah.
He'll know if they're listening. Everyone butchers his name, I'm sure, and I apologize for that. But to be that true number 2, and give them that threat, because like you said, he went down, he beat Columbus, he went to McCarthy. Those are 2 big road wins at a junior pitcher who also is a Gator commitment as well.
Right.
So the fact that he's done really well.
Yeah, Austin Ford too, another big bat in that lineup. I mean, you look up and down, they don't look like they have many weaknesses at all, and they just went through probably the roughest stretch they're going to face in the regular season. Like you said, going through Columbus, going through North Broward Prep, and McCarthy. They still have a few good ones left on the schedule, but this team has a chance to do something, rarely seen in baseball. I think 96, from what I saw, Westminster Christian went 36-0, and they had 1 tie. I don't know how the tie happened, but since those last great teams just after A-Rod was there, we haven't seen this type of a run. If they do it, if they pull it off and go 30-something and 0, win the state title that way.
Yeah, because they're 15-0 now. I think you said
Yeah.
the other night they're 137 straight going back to the next. And we don't want to jinx them, but
No,
I
right.
think that like I said in baseball, I think if they did lose one before the playoffs, I don't think they'd be too upset in the fact of maybe the karma, maybe because they did. Fitz noted the other day they got a little luck in there and go their way on that squeeze play, which led to an obstruction call, which brought in the decisive run. A tough loss to lose that way from McCarthy, but good teams make their own breaks, and Austin Ford stayed in a rundown. Yeah, it's just so they're putting themselves in position. And I think the only time I saw them trail was that 1-0 to McCarthy. Maybe I'm wrong. They may have trailed early on against somebody else, but playing from behind is a lot different. So you never know, and you kind of have to not let that snowball if you fall behind. A 7-inning game, it's hard enough to come back in a 9-inning game in the big leagues or college. But at the high school level, you're down a run in the 5th inning. Even with a great lineup, you never know how the player's going to react. They could hit the ball at somebody. They could get, you never know what the umpire strike zone looks like. There's a lot of factors that could go into a baseball game, and the fact that they're dealing with some adversity. They're not just blowing everyone out. This past week, I think at one stretch I was writing about them. They had outscored the opposition like 40-4 or something. It was something really, really, the disparity in run differential. If they gave up a run in 2 weeks, it was a lot. And they, basically run rule everybody. So they're going to have to stay level and keep getting better. But what helps them is they're so deep. They're at least 2 deep at every position. And that really helps them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's talk a little about McCarthy then. At that point, the next night bounced back and beat a good Westminster Christian team on their home field. And this is a squad that, aside from that loss, and unfortunately had a tough one against IMG, but IMG is ridiculously talented, as we know. This team has done remarkably well, and it's starting to look kind of like they're not quite there yet. But remember, this is a McCarthy program that had 6 state titles at one point. I forgot the stretch. They have it on their wall, but it was an amazing run from 2009 to 2017 when Alex Fernandez and those guys were there. Then it bottomed out when situation happened over there. Everything broke up. Then they get hit with COVID. But Aaron Voracek and his squad get back to state the year after, 2021. He said maybe not the most talented squad, more of a scrappy team that just kept clawing and scratching and winning games. Now he's starting to have, starting with that left side of the infield he's got over there. Yeah, this is starting to look more like the McCarthy teams of old, even if maybe they're not quite there yet, but they're progressing toward that. So he's done a great job.
Oh, no doubt. And Czech, he used to be with the Marlins. He was on the coaching, the amateur scouting staff. He worked under Stan Meek and part of the Marlins drafts, many moons ago. So, really glad to see him having success there at McCarthy. Obviously, he's coaching colleges and junior colleges and doing a really, really strong job at Archbishop McCarthy. And the left side of their infield, scouts come to see them every day, and even in their practices, scouts are there to see Antonio Jimenez at short and Justin LeBron at third. And those two are interchangeable. LeBron's basically might be a shortstop, but on this team, he's playing third. And Dre, the other night, he was making plays at third, like LeBron I'm talking about. Those are like big league plays and look like a major league third baseman coming in on a bunt, and just how fluid, and both of their arm strength. I just love watching them throw the ball across the diamond, because they have as strong arms as you'll ever see at a high school level. And Jimenez is a commit, and LeBron to Alabama. And I'm not sure either one of them are going to see campus. There's a couple of guys we could probably talk about in this podcast. I don't know if either one will be stepping on a campus, but assuming they do, they have 2 guys with really, really bright futures. And then a really impressive hitter, probably their most consistent hitter, has been Andrew Ildefonso, who's a FIU commit, and he plays some first base and pitches. But he had been a little sore and hadn't pitched in a little while. But really, really impressive. Top of their order. Obviously, if you're going to have any chance in state, your first 4 or 5 hitters are going to have to carry you. I think that's the edge I'm giving, to Douglas, is their their 9-hole hitter beats you as well as their 2-hole hitter. Some of these other schools don't have that benefit, but McCarthy is certainly having a good stretch right now, and it's good to see them back.
And to win a state title, you need those two pitchers that can go on back-to-back days. And if Ildefonso, that's the hope that the coach Check was talking about, that if they can get him healthy enough where he can get on the mound and give him that 1-2 punch with McShane, then you're thinking
they have a chance.
Mavericks have a great chance to do it. And they're in Class 5A, Douglas in 7A. You got two potential champions there in Class 6A. Switching to Dade, Doral came in as the favorite. And they were starting to get hot. They went 2-2 at the National Invitational Tournament up in Cary, North Carolina. But I don't think anyone's having a better season right now than Adrian Santana, or very few, if any, in this area. I mean, he's been unbelievable.
Yeah, he's. I saw him early on. I wish I could see him more. I saw him face Douglas. He didn't have the greatest of games, but you could see the swing. I think there was like 40 scouts at that game. And from what I understand, obviously I think he has 7 homers, unless he hit a couple up in Carolina that we didn't see posted yet. He's a traveling scout show. It's wherever he's going right now. That's another University of Miami commit who I think he's going late in the first round, maybe that comp round between the first and second, and maybe not further down than the second round. But Santana appears to be the player in the market. We don't really have that top 10 guy, in terms of the MLB draft this year, or maybe even that top 20 overall. But Santana may be the highest draft high school player we have in South Florida. And I think George Lombard at Gulliver Prep is probably second. I think those two are the kind of the players that the pros are looking at, as much as obviously Lombard's got a Vandy commit. But as far as Santana, you could definitely see the swing is there. He has kind of a really sweet swing he puts some lift on the ball without having looking to make a launch angle swing. And defensively, he's just really smooth. And the other kid that everyone loves, at least on the scout side, on that Doral team, is center fielder Michael Torres, who's just a junior, is already committed to UM as well.
Yeah, and speaking of Lombard, I mean, he's another one, a great athlete. I know he plays soccer too. I mean, this kid has that, that the same type of skills, same type of tools. And his brother too. I mean, I know you saw him, and you said his brother is kind of not talked about as much, but
yeah, he will be. He will be.
Yeah.
He might be the best player on the field any night. Yeah. And George Jr. may, he may agree. Jacob Lombard's just a freshman. Both of them played soccer, as you noted. So they got a late start. Keep that in mind. These were 2-sport kids who won they won the state title in soccer. Mm-hmm. And they missed the first 3 or so games. But on top of that, they just missed the preparation for the baseball season. And now they're, at 10, 12, however many games they're back in the fold. They're both kind of being what everyone thought. So, but we'll see how they come along.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you too, just about some kids, because we're always having these conversations either with coaches or you and I, just talking about baseball. But I wanted to ask you about some people that have caught your eye this season since you've been back covering this. I know one kid that jumped out, one that you were mentioning the other night, that's had a pretty good year, kind of a little bit under the radar, is Braden Rosenthal over at Calvary Christian. What impressed you about this kid? What you've heard people say about him?
Yeah. I mean, for one, is he a sophomore or junior? I can't remember offhand. He might be a sophomore.
Yeah, he's a sophomore.
Yeah. And he's already 6'4", and
6'4", 210.
I think he's the coach's son, and just a big arm, and the other day he won a game with his arm and his bat, and he just looks like the real deal. And it's not surprising that coaches' kids, as whether it's big leagues and you see that, or legacy players, when you're around the game at such a young age. And as you know, South Florida is a hotbed for all high school sports. Football, baseball is really stand out, and that it isn't surprising that they are so good. You have Devin Fitzgerald over at Stoneman Douglas, Fitz his kid. So it's not surprising to see these high school kids, but he's a fun one, and I'm just blown away by the overall number of, pretty much every team's got 2 D1 players. Mm-hmm. Which means they could play with anybody, and Calvary was supposed to be a little down, and they seem to be a lot better than people thought, and they're kind of catching fire. But the other kid I really, really have enjoy, and I've seen him play about 3 or 4 times already, is E.J. Burns, the pitcher shortstop at Taravella. A big fan of his. The kid's just an ultra competitor. He's a Florida Gulf Coast commit. I think he just earlier this year he committed there. He's not super flashy, but he's just a gamer. He's a clutch hitter. He's got a really good swing. He's highly competitive on the mound. He's one of those kids I wouldn't be shocked if, pros in a couple of years are really on him as just a under the radar ball player that's gonna jump out and catch people's attention in a couple of years, especially.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, that depth, I mean, I know I always see it when we do our preview. It's always like this signee, and you see the level of talent on each team. That's the parity too, where you've seen some of these results so far this year, where a team, not to knock them or anything, but like a Flanagan, let's say, who's 8-8, beats a team like St. Thomas the other day, or St. Brendan comes up and beats Belen, who was 11-1. Even the teams that have started off hot, that look like the state title contenders, on any given night, some of these teams have enough talent to contend with them and come up with a big result like that.
Yeah, a team like Flanagan, which has a strong history. Obviously, they've been a strong program through the years. They're a little young. They've got some players that just statistically hadn't really performed yet, but they got some players that are they're pretty good players that it's not shocking. St. Thomas has been hot and cold. They got a lot of players. They got UM commits, they got Notre Dame commits, and they had a big win on Saturday against Sunset, I believe. So that was a good win for them to kind of right the ship a little bit, because it's kind of a little sideways for St. Thomas, but they're certainly capable of getting hot at the right time. And we've heard a lot of coaches say that, we're trying to win their last game, and if they drop a few in the middle of their season, they still have time to kind of catch fire and get it going there. But like I said, there's some players, and baseball is a game, hot and cold. It's easy to ride the wave of this guy's hot. Maybe this guy was hot the first half, and the guy that was cold, it flips in the final 10 to 15 games, and somebody else catches fire. And that's where those complete teams step up. That's where it's not just, you need George Lombard to go for 4 for 4 every day, or you have no chance to win. I'll tell you another little sleeper school that really impressed me is U School, the University School of Nova Southeastern. They're very young. I don't even know if they have a senior, but they got some sophomores. They're a really fun team. They beat Gulliver earlier, and they've been highly competitive, and they're a fun school. I like trying to find the right games to go out and see some of these kids again. Kind of matching up schedules is kind of hard, but that's definitely a school worth paying attention to.
Yeah, I mean that whole mix in Class 3A once we hit playoff time is going to be fun, because they're Calvary Christians in there, University that you just mentioned. They're 10-3-1 right now. They're right at the top of that district. North Broward Prep is in the district right above them. If you go below, Westminster's there, Gulliver's there. I mean, that entire region is going to be a battle come postseason time, like it usually is. But I think even more this year, because I think they moved a couple teams into that mix. So going to be pretty crazy. And you mentioned Sunset the other day. I haven't had a chance to see them yet, but that I'm going to try this week. But that's a team, again, remarkable what they've been able to do, because they were 1-31 over the past 2 years. They're off to a 9-5 start and playing legit competition. They even have a win over Miami Springs this year. Like you said, they played Aquinas the other day. So it's not 9-5 cheap. They're actually have turned that program around from what they've struggled the last couple of years. But again, it goes back to the point about the depth and the overall talent pool that there is down here, that almost every team has something.
Yeah. When I started doing it this year, and as you know, I'd done preps in forever, and it started with football, and you just saw the amount of talent, obviously, for SB Live doing that in the fall, and now in baseball, because you kind of can circle maybe 6 schools, and you're like, okay, you can if you're just chasing the best players, best teams, you could just kind of circle them and say, I'll spend most of my time doing those schools, and it's like every week I'm finding more and more these schools on the edges that are like, wow, I mean, these guys, this guy's a Wake Forest commit, or Naples came in and played Archbishop McCarthy, and they had I wish I could remember the kid's name, but the junior left-handed pitcher who's a UM commit, and he pitched like 4 innings of relief and is just filthy. This guy's going to be really good. And the guy who started that game is another. That's a UF commit. So it's like you just are seeing these pitchers throwing 93 to 94. I saw Rodriguez hit 97, and we know Frankie Menendez could hit 96, 97. I don't know what Frankie's touch is max this year, but those are kind of the two really big arms right here in Dade Broward. But you're seeing just some really heavy velo coming. And I guess to me, the things I look at, Dre, on some of these players that are the D1 commits is how they hit the velo. It's like everyone kind of struggles. You're a high school kid. If someone's throwing 95, you're probably getting blown away. But if you are a Vandy commit or commit or a serious type player, you're catching up to that. You're having at least some level of success. You don't look overmatched. And, obviously effective breaking balls usually get everybody out anyway, whether you're a good hitter or bad. It's usually the mistakes that get hit. But again, it's just like you say, there's players everywhere, and that's really good to see and encouraging. As someone I've covered the MLB just 21 years now, that people say it's dead, baseball, where's the future and this, that, and the other thing. I could just speak to the state of Florida overall, South Florida specifically, and we're not even talking about Palm Beach, the players that are up there, and there are a lot of them. So there's players all around this state, and the sport's in really good hands. It's just a matter of them, living up to their potential and just keep playing.
Well, Joe, it's fun talking to you about those said players and teams, and we'll invite you into this again, man. We get a little closer, month and a half away from the playoff, month and a half away from state, about maybe 3-4 weeks from the playoffs starting. So it'll be fun. Maybe we can do like another go around of this once we get to the postseason and kind of see who has the best shot at bringing home the gold this year.
Oh, Dre, anytime, buddy. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. Joe Frisaro from Scorebook Live. Check out his work there. Joe, where can they find you on Twitter, socials, all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, at SB Live, SB Sports Live Florida is one account. That's for the site itself. But me at my name, Joe Frisaro, or at Man on 2ND, and you'll find me there.
Joe, thanks for being a guest on Titletown South Florida.
Thanks, Ray. Talk to you later. See you.
All right. Well, we thank Joe for that. We'll have him on again, as we said, hopefully before the end of the season. And now we're going to salute the top players from this past week. A lot of them from baseball. Some of the ones we've not only the ones we talked about before, but others. Luis Suarez at St. Brendan. We mentioned in the interview with Joe that they had a big win over Belen. Luis was a big part of that, going 3 for 4, 2 doubles, and RBI to lead the Sabres to that 5-4 victory. Austin Simmons over at True North led the Titans to a huge win. This is a young program at True North that's already coming up with some big wins. They're still kind of a 500 team, but they're coming. 5-1 victory there, struck out 9, allowed no earned runs against American Heritage. That is a major victory for them. Sean Duffin over at Monsignor Pace went 3 for 4 with 4 RBI, 2 doubles. Great game and a win over Goldman. And then on the softball field, Rachel Hawkins had a great afternoon against Palmetto. Always a big game when Coral Reef plays Palmetto. She led the Barracudas with 2 home runs, went 4 for 4, 6 RBI. Those two are going to play each other again come regionals probably and battle it out. But a big victory for Coral Reef. And then on flag football, which that season is going on, Somerset Silver Palms also having a big year. A two-way athlete there, Jada Byron, 36 of 53, 704 yards passing. 12 touchdowns, a lot of talented players on that team as well, as Somerset Silver Palms continues to make a name. And on the Broward side, Chantel Gillou for Archbishop McCarthy softball struck out 9, 6 no-hit innings to help the Mavericks beat the American Heritage softball team, which is also a rivalry there. Girls water polo is going on right now. They're getting down to the regional round. Riley Andrus for St. Thomas Aquinas had 15 combined goals to lead them to a district championship. On the track, Christian Moreau just won the discus and the shot put at the University of Florida relays for American Heritage. And then we've got a couple of standouts from the baseball field. Bruno Schaefer at Flanagan, big go-ahead home run that helped them in that win over St. Thomas that we mentioned before. And Mason Elrod, kid for West Broward, 3 for 4, 2 home runs, 5 RBI, walk-off win for West Broward over Taravella. He also went 2 for 2 against Cardinal Gibbons. West Broward a team to keep an eye on as well. We didn't mention them before, but the Bobcats are having a good year as well. So now we'll switch over and head back to the gridiron, to the football field, where we're about 3 to 4 weeks away from spring football. And of course, who better as always to come talk some football? And that's our good buddy Larry Blustein, who joins us once again on this episode of Titletown South Florida. Larry, sorry for a little bit of the wait there, but we appreciate you as always. We're getting close, buddy. It's almost time formally for spring football. You know, teams are doing stuff, this and that, but it starts to look a little more real pretty soon. Larry, how have you been, man, and how are you enjoying this off season?
Doing good. It's kind of funny when you say that it's a month off, and we were at a camp yesterday and a couple of them last weekend. So it's continuous for us, and certainly it's been a crazy off season, but isn't every off season kind of crazy, especially in Miami-Dade and Broward? Last year, when everything was said and done, between Dade and Broward and football, they had 353 transfers. This year we're sitting at 96, so we're kind of behind, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to explode after April into May. And it's because, a lot of schools won't let you play your spring game if you transfer. So a lot of kids stay because, they want the colleges to look at them, and, they can play in scrimmages, but they can't, they can't play in games. And so that's why June 1st is a day that kind of keeps me busy as well. But right now, as usual, Miami Central, quite a few transfers. Northern leading the way.
I saw that.
With 19 new faces that are coming, and they're getting kids. The funny thing is we're just not getting kids from county to county. Northern got a kid from North Florida Christian in Tallahassee. It's Miami Central's quarterback, who was the 11th rated quarterback in the state of Texas. He comes in. So we're getting kids from outside the area, but I think that Central and New Orleans are definitely helping themselves. We know St. Thomas and Chaminade, kind of are like magnets. So they get what they get in the off season. Chaminade kind of already is taking care of the offensive line issues that, after you lose 4 guys, but they went and got Keon Reyes from Miami Central, who was at Carroll City. So that gives them some senior leadership, along with a couple of other guys. Western and Broward County has really picked it up, and they're going to give Columbus a run this year. It's going to be a serious run. It's going to be a 2-team race, and only because of the fact that they just picked up Davy Belfort from Gulliver, who committed to Virginia Tech, and also a kid that came back to South Florida from DeMatha High School. So he, so they gives them a running game. Plus, they're just, for a public school, you got to give them credit. I don't think there's 3 better public schools as far as the talent, maybe in the entire state, than New Orleans Central and Western, because we all know that the Columbuses, and I still feel that Columbus and Apopka will be the rematch next year. Both of them are talented, well coached, but I think Western could throw a little wrench into the plans because of the way that they've been getting kids, and they're big up front. And but it's been interesting. I say Homestead the same way. Everybody thought that when Phil Simpson went to Nebraska, it would be all over, but Ronnie Thornton is part of the family.
Kept it together.
Kept everybody around, and then some. They got one of the top 10 players in the state. The kid Randall, who started at wide receiver for Daytona Beach Mainland. So he goes all the way down from Volusia County to Homestead. So the recruiting and or the transfers, Andre, it's, every year it's really different, but there's a lot of schools like Hialeah's picking up a kid, Jack Sawyer. The avant-garde situation kind of fell a little bit of a part, and those kids went to Carroll City thinking that Nitro Baker would be there, and then Nitro Baker left Carroll City, and now Vernon Wilder kind of upholds the tradition that his family set maybe 50, 60 years ago at Carroll City. So he becomes the head coach. So we'll see what happens as far as some of those kids, because Carroll City got something like 10 or 11 kids, mostly from Avant-Garde. I think that I ran into Michael Lee Harris yesterday, new Northwestern head coach. He feels really, really good about what's happening in his off season, just trying to keep the kids around. T. Washington the same way, I mean, ran into Gerald Modest, who I think has been the most active player in the off season. He's gone to everything, and you don't usually see that, because a lot of those kids, if they ran a 4.4 or a 4.5, they won't run it again, because just in case. But he been the MVP at the Rivals camp, MVP at the Under Armour camp, yesterday at Pylon Camp Series. He was the MVP. So he's kind of emerged as one of the top backs in the state, only because he goes places. And then obviously when you're 6 foot 180, that happens. But it's been really active. New coaches, as we know, at quite a few places around South Florida. Andre, you and I talked about that last time. I mean, obviously in Chris Reed returns back to South Dade. Good guy, hard worker, hopes to revive what's going on over there. As I said, Ronnie Thornton, is at Homestead. Patrick Wennon goes back to his alma mater at Westminster Christian, which I think is a really good move. The most recent move, and it was Somerset Academy, and obviously in Pines, and they kind of fell apart because of the fact that, there was a while where after Nitro Baker left, that they didn't have a coach, so their quarterback left, their wide receiver went to St. Thomas, few kids left, but they got a really interesting hire. LaQuinton Taylor, he comes from South Lake High School up in the Orlando area. Good guy, somebody who's, a education guy too. So, you look at that, and then you look at Marlon Robinson, who was part of the Flanagan championship run. He returns there to become head coach at Flanagan, and certainly one of the favorite guys in the area, Quentin Short, who was at Douglas. And, unfortunately he had to go through all the tragedy that happened, and then Coach May left and went to South Fort Myers, but he stayed in there. He goes to Piper, which is really interesting as well, because Piper's always has some pretty good, talent as well. Matt Dixon, Columbus guy for a long time, has taken over at Somerset Silver Palms, who has a lot of plans. They just built a new facility over there. So we've got a lot of transfers going on and a lot of good things going on with the coaching staffs, and it's not easy. It's not easy to, especially in South Florida. You don't know who you're going to have on your roster from day to day.
There was a couple of layers in there I wanted to try and tackle there. It was obviously like a lot of good info, but
just
when you mentioned, when you mentioned Michael Lee Harris, I wanted to kind of talk to you a little more about that. What do you think of what Northwestern's done so far this offseason, and what kind of a coach, what kind of an impact do you think he can make there? Because I mean, Max Edwards did a good job for years there. And that team, is still, they were one play away from upsetting Central last year in the playoffs. So how do the Bulls look? How would the Bulls fans, what can they expect?
Well, you know how the fans are. I mean, you could win 3 state championships in 4 or 5 years, and then you're gone. So, because Max probably wasn't a Northwestern guy, quote unquote, but he won, and he developed kids, but you know what? And I like Max a lot, and I think that he worked as hard as anybody, and people respected him. Max sometimes was a little crazy, but he always would talk to you. That. I mean, he'll never skirt you, he'll never big time you. Even when he was winning the state championships. But Michael Lee comes in, he's a fresh face. He's a guy who kind of, the kids will probably identify with a lot more because of the fact that, he didn't play, but 14 years ago or 13, 14 years ago.
He was there catching passes from Teddy Bridgewater.
From Teddy, right. So, but really, he goes places. Like I said, he was at the Pylon tournament already. They got, the kid Posse, who's been at a number of schools. Yes, I think he has more shirts than I do. And
yeah, he's been at a few stops.
Yeah, so he goes to Northwestern. Let's see how he fits in, because they still have a lot of talent. They're always big up front, and certainly returned a lot of those wide receivers last year. Other than Andy Jean, they were really young. They were freshmen and sophomore, and they come back and, they got a really good running game. So, I mean, they're going to be in the mix. They're just in a gauntlet, with Norland and Booker T and Central.
Norland's made it more of a gauntlet. That's
they have. But you got to remember last year, Norland only lost to Miami Central, by 12, 10, or
right. No, they weren't far off. But I'm curious to see what kind of a jump they take because of all these.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are kind of skeptical about Norland because they've got all these individual kids. A lot of these guys never played together. Although Mike Tunsil's gang from Jackson pretty much moved over there, and then with the kid Jermaine Carter coming over from Carroll City. I think they have arguably one of the best defensive lines maybe in the state now, because you have the Lumen brothers and you have Marcelin, who will probably have to go to outside linebacker now, and then Jermaine Carter in the middle. They got amazing amount of defensive backs that came over, but they returned one of the top quarterbacks. Or Enio Yapor is a solid guy. They lost running game, but then they gained a couple of kids, and they're going to be tough. We know Central's just always stacked. Everybody wants to play for them. Their defensive line is really, really good as well. With the way McCall came on as a running back last year, I think that they're set there. Wide receiver wise, I think LaWayne McCoy is as good as anybody. Obviously. And then you've got a really deep secondary, and Central's a winning team. That's the way it is. They're there for a reason, but they're going to be pushed a little bit this year. So it's going to be interesting. And, they announced the Broward County showcase teams.
Yes.
Which is going to be an interesting thing, because Norland will find out if they kind of made a mistake by getting Bosco on the schedule when they see Bosco roll into Fort Lauderdale to play St. Thomas.
They went out and have done all this. They want to play with the big boys.
Yeah.
There you go. Right off the bat, they're going to have one. But let me ask you, Larry, because besides the big boys, besides the defending champs, the teams that, like Norland hasn't won it recently, but they have won it before. Who's a team that you would say has benefited, maybe one of those under the radar teams that's kind of never really been at that state championship level? Is there anyone that maybe has benefited the most this offseason from the quote unquote transfer portal?
Right. There's been a few schools that, Western's been in the mix, but I think Monarch is a team that a lot of people have to be considering because of the fact that they've got AJ Hairston coming back, but and a wide receiving core that's as good as you're going to get. But they added a lot of good pieces, and then I think that they're going to be pretty much in the mix. We know that Ely's going to be back again because, they lost a couple of kids, but they've gained quite a few, and weren't they the biggest surprise? Maybe, in the last couple of years, going from basically a team that was, a cellar dweller into a district champion, and playing St. Thomas in the region semifinals, which is, I thought, pretty good for them. And but they'll be back. In another team that I had an opportunity to watch too, and they're young, but they added a couple of pieces, is Deerfield. Deerfield always has a lot of players available to them. They've obviously, going to several different places ever since. But Coach Hall's done a great job. They got a kid who comes in from Ohio, a defensive end that I got a chance to watch. I think he's going to be exciting. And unfortunately, a team that is really – and it's crazy because the last 2 years we're putting them kind of on some type of pedestal, and they've really gone down is Dillard. I don't think that Dillard is even a top 10 team anymore. And that in the county.
They've had the reverse effect from the portal.
Basically, Andre, and they got like 5 kids left on the team, and from what I hear is they're not going to be around in the next couple of weeks. So they're going to complain, and they haven't named the head coach yet. I know that Isaac Bruce was one of the names I mentioned, but I think more realistically, it would be Fred Flowers, who's at Coral Springs, who was a Dillard guy. But again, they've waited so long since Tate stepped away. So they're not keeping kids and losing kids like Blunt to Central. And
that kills you this time of year if you're not stable at the coaching spot.
So that, I mean, and then we know that a couple of teams that figure Miramar, I think, is going to be on the rise again. Cale Alexander comes back at quarterback. They have quite a few kids ready to play. But, other than, the Heritages and the Chaminades and the St. Thomases, and then we mentioned Ely and we mentioned Western in Broward County. And there, a few other teams will kind of poke their head in. Plantation's done real well with the transfer portal during the offseason as well. So, and then Dade County is the same. Yeah. Well,
I like what I saw them last year, and so if they build on that,
Well, and Dade County is still the same dudes. I mean, it's still going to be New Orleans, still going to be Central, it's going to be Northwestern, and Booker T has added a couple of pieces as well. And we know with Ice Harris back there, I mean, he's a no nonsense guy. They come back with perhaps one of the best running games, if not the county in the state, other than St. Thomas, who has Well, they got AJ, and then I just talked about Gerald Modest, but St. Thomas may have the best running game in the country. I mean, with the acquisition of Stacy Gage, who is obviously a top 3 kid in the state, along with the kid Lyles, who I thought was as good as anybody. The only thing right now that St. Thomas doesn't have is a quarterback. The kid Endorf goes in as the number 1 guy in spring, but they didn't bring that guy in there yet. You never know. But
St. Thomas, historically has been those programs that even as long as you get a decent, steady guy there, they win in spite of that.
No doubt. And I think Endorf is the type of guy, he's worked extremely hard, knows the offense. He knows that he's going to manage the team. And that's all he has to do, because they've got major receivers, the Chance Washington and then our Chance Robinson. And then you got the Madison kid. And then the biggest pickup, I think, was Johnny Arnius, who's going to be a junior. He came from Somerset Pines. He's going to be a slot kid. He's capable of catching 60 balls, especially when he's not going to get attention. They have big-time wide tight end that came in. So St. Thomas is St. Thomas. You're not going to get around that.
Yeah. But Larry, as always, thank you so much. We're getting close to the season. Are you back? Where can they catch you on Monday nights? Are you back on Monday nights on the radio?
Yeah, we're back on Monday night, and we did, thanks to you, we've done a complete reversal this week. We have 7 basketball coaches, all state champions, in the girls and the boys from South Florida.
That's right.
So I'm excited about that. We don't really do a lot of basketball, but I think this is a fitting night with, especially with the NCAAs, and it's been a fitting time. And I think, nobody really, other than you guys, gives the basketball teams, especially the ones that won state. You look at St. Thomas's girls 3 in a row. You look at Country Day with Kyle Swaby, one of our North Miami graduates who's won 8 out of the last 10 years.
Proud pioneer. Yep.
Yeah, Columbus, who's repeated, with Coach Moran. So, I think it's a good thing. Sagemont back on the scene for the first time in 9-10 years, and Berlin Jesuit first time.
Yep. I was saying a scrappy Berlin squad too.
And schools like Mater Lakes and Riviera, who's never really been in the spotlight. And look at Mater Lakes this year in wrestling; they finished 3rd. Amongst top teams. So. We're excited. And Dayton Broward, this time of year, especially as you mentioned with baseball, when you have a Douglas and Archbishop McCarthy and schools like that, and Westminster and programs, you're always going to be very relevant. So, I'm excited. Monday nights is where we are until, hopefully the Panthers and the Heat go far, but if they don't, we'll be on Monday throughout the summer.
There you go. He's Larry Blustein, Larry Legend. Thank you so much, as always, my friend. Great talking to you.
Dre. Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right. Yep. All right. Well, we thank Larry as always, and we'll have Larry on again as we get close. Spring football starting up, formal practices. I know I always say it gets real, but it's real year round with Larry. I mean, he's at camps, he's at 7-on-7 tournaments. The season, the real season really never stops, but the games begin again come May, and the practices starting May 1st will be going around, and we'll be out there. My Herald will be covering some more of that this year. You'll see some more stuff on this show on Titletown South Florida. So for Larry Blustein, our friend Joe Frisaro, and we'll be back very soon with another episode of this. I'm Andre Fernandez, and take care, everybody.